So, my wife 26F, whom I'll refer to as M, was unfaithful to me 27 meters with a friend of mine. Let's call him J to 7M. Here's a bit of background. We initially met when I was 22 at a friend's wedding. M was a good friend of the bride, and I was friends with the groom. The hosts strategically seated us together, hoping we would hit it off. Upon seeing M for the first time, I was captivated by her beauty. As we started talking, we discovered numerous common interests, and an instant connection was formed. We engaged in conversation, enjoyed dinner, and later took to the dance floor, dancing and enjoying the night. We eventually shared a kiss in the middle of the dance floor. Our friends, the bride and groom, noticed and approached us excitedly, inquiring about the potential spark between us. We downplayed it, continuing our night. Although we didn't exchange numbers that evening, I received a text from M about a week later. As the bride had given her my number, I agreed to go out with her, and that marked the beginning of our relationship. Overall, our relationship was fantastic, with minimal arguments that never escalated into anything serious. About 2 years into dating, I proposed, and we got married less than a year later. Our marriage, which had lasted a little over a year, suddenly unraveled in the lead-up to our first anniversary. I started noticing concerning signs. She became more protective of her phone. Girls' nights became more frequent, and our intimate life nearly vanished. Despite expressing my concerns multiple times, I was dismissed with claims that I was letting insecurities get the best of me. It seemed like my feelings and attempts at communication were being ignored, so I grew increasingly distant. I stopped giving her goodbye kisses before leaving for work, and unless it was something essential, we hardly spoke. One night, while she was asleep, I decided to investigate further. I checked her phone, laptop, and messenger apps but found nothing. Drawing inspiration from stories I read online, I checked her car. In her car, I discovered a second phone, instantly realizing the truth. I wanted concrete evidence before confronting her. So I meticulously went through every message, connected the phone to my computer, printed out every conversation and photo, and spent the night researching divorce lawyers, devoting hours to my home office. I read through lawyer bios and found one I liked. I emailed him, but as it was a Saturday, he wasn't available. Determined to uncover the identity of the other person involved, I used my phone to call the mysterious number, pretending to be from Spectrum. However, when Jay's contact appeared, it all clicked. I exploded in anger, yelling and cursing in my office. When my wife came to check on me, I ordered her to leave. She closed the door and retreated to our room. It was the first time I had ever cursed at her or raised my voice beyond a normal volume. For the entire day, I sequestered myself in my office, silently fuming and glaring at the wall, feeling the need to confide in someone. I called a friend of the groom from the wedding and asked if he would join me for a drink. He sensed something was wrong and inquired about my well-being. I admitted I wasn't okay and desperately needed a drink. Without saying a word, I gathered all the printouts and headed to the bar. I got to the bar first and ordered for shots of Jack Daniels, along with a beer. By the time my friend T arrived, I was on my last shot. When he inquired about what was going on, I straightforwardly told him that M was cheating. T expressed sympathy, and when I revealed it was with J, he visibly showed irritation. Interestingly, T was the one who introduced me to J, and all he could say was, "I'm sorry," repeatedly. While J and I weren't extremely close, we were amicable when we saw each other at gatherings, though we wouldn't actively plan to hang out. I urged T not to mention this to anyone as it was fresh information, and I hadn't even spoken to M or a lawyer yet. I specifically asked him not to share it with his wife, and requested that if she inquired about my well-being, he should say I'm having work-related issues. T and I continued drinking and talking for most of the night. When I finally checked my phone around 3 a.m., I found missed calls and numerous texts from M asking about my whereabouts, when I'd be home, and if I was okay. Upon arriving home, I found Em asleep on the couch. I silently went up to our bedroom and went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up to find her in bed. I got dressed, left the house, picked up my car, and headed to my office, immersing myself in work for the day, returning home around 10 p.m. I was surprised to see my wife there to greet me. She mentioned making dinner and asked if I wanted her to heat it up, but I declined and went to bed, despite my request to be left alone. She persisted in asking what was wrong. Eventually, I snapped and yelled at him to stop, expressing my need for sleep and to be left alone. The following morning, I received an email from the lawyer, scheduling a meeting later in the day. I confirmed the appointment and prepared for the day. Heading downstairs to leave, Em had made breakfast and wanted to talk. I grabbed a small plate, sat down, and listened as she went on about my changed behavior. She was curious about the reasons behind my demeanor, and I vaguely mentioned work stress, assuring her it would be over soon. After finishing up, I informed her that I had to go, went to my office, and impatiently counted down the minutes until the meeting with the lawyer. Upon leaving, I informed my assistant that I was going out to lunch with a client, anticipating potential calls from my wife to my workplace, and proceeded to the lawyer's office. The meeting went smoothly, and I handed over all the gathered evidence. The lawyer expressed regret for the situation, emphasizing the significance of the collected information in our at-fault state, stating that my wife would have limited claims to my assets. My primary concern was to initiate the divorce process promptly. The lawyer requested to retain the evidence, but I insisted on making copies. I hadn't revealed to my wife that I was aware of her actions, and I preferred not to hear her excuses. He agreed, and his assistant made copies, inquiring about the timeline for serving her with papers. He mentioned it would take about 2 weeks. Thanking him, I left for home, ready to confront my wife. However, upon arrival, she wasn't there. After attempting to call her with no response, I sent a direct message. I don't give a damn if you're with Jay right now. Get home. We need to talk. To my surprise, she called back within a minute, questioning my message, and I simply instructed her to come home immediately. She arrived about 15 minutes later, and I remarked, "Well, look at that. 15 minutes? That's about the same distance between here and Jay's place, isn't it?" She looked at me with confusion, and I gave her a moment to collect herself. However, she remained silent, so I said, "Well, nothing to say." Initially, she attempted to deny and gaslight the situation, and I allowed her to continue. As she worked herself up, she started insulting me. Frustrated, I slammed my fist on the table, silencing her, and then presented the evidence, showing her the substantial amount of information I had gathered. Holding each printout, I revealed the details one by one. She told me to stop, started crying, and attempted to apologize, expressing her love for me. I retorted, "Honey, what happened to that energy you had just a minute ago, when you were so adamant about degrading and insulting me?" Despite her attempts to hug me and convey her remorse, I held out my hand, signaling her not to touch me. I informed her that my lawyer had copies of these photos and messages, and I was divorcing her. I instructed her to grab a bag, collect her clothes, and leave my house. It's been 3 days since that incident, and I haven't received any communication from her.